Hello everyone. For those of you who haven't seen my previous presentation earlier today, my name is Jana and I'm a CG specialist at Chaos Group. In this character workshop, I'm going to walk you through the whole process of rendering this particular character, also known as the Nightcrawler. If you have any questions during my presentation, please write them down in the chat box, and after the presentation, I'm going to answer those. So here a short overview, what I'm going to talk about. So about the concept idea and how it was created, how this creature was created in the 3D. Then I'm going to talk about the main challenges by creating a character. Then about the studio setup, the lighting situation. Then I'm going to show you how you can set realistic hair and skin materials with V-Ray, and at the end I'm going to talk about the final touches. So the Nightcrawler is a comic figure, and originally it was created by Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. For the first time, the Nightcrawler appears in the Marvel's comic book, Giant Size X-Men. This sketch, which you can see on the right side, was created by an artist called Randy Bishop, and his goal was to create a superhero as a child, and it should be, and it is, cute, cuddly, and naive. This is the final render from Victor Hugo, and he's a Brazilian 3D artist, and he was so kind to give his scene to us. So today I'm going to show you the approach of creating this particular character. And originally the scene was created in 3ds Max and rendered with V-Ray, but I have recreated the scene inside of Maya so you can see the workflow. So the concept is one of the most important steps of the whole process of creating 3D characters, and this is because all of the following steps are based on that concept. It is good to have as more information as possible. And in this case, Victor Hugo had information about the forms, about the pose of the character, about the color palette, and the composition. But he had to define the lighting mood by himself. So the main challenge was to create a cartoony character with realistic materials. So first I'm going to talk about the geometry, and let's switch to Maya. And many artists create their characters inside of a sculpting program, and this is because in a program like ZBrush, for example, or like Mudbox, you can paint as much detail as you wish, because such program can handle 1 million of polygons. But this is not the case when you want to import your character into Maya. If we import the high polygonal mesh, we will slow down the viewport navigation as well as the rendering process. So the approach is the following. I can export my character as a low polygonal mesh, import it into Maya. Then I need to export a displacement map to bring back the details. And I'm going now to start the RT so we can see what's going on. And at the moment, I have lights in my scene, but they are all disabled, as you can see, and I don't have any GI, so V-Ray uses the default lighting. And to bring back the detail, I used a V-Ray displacement, and you can create it from here with the right click of your mouse, and you can create a single displacement node or a multiple displacement. So with the multiple displacement, you can control multiple objects with a single displacement node. So I have already set my displacement. So here it is. And it is disabled, so let me enable it, and you're going to see that now I have the detail from the sculpting program. So here it is. And make sure when you use the RT to have here in the RT options the V-Ray displacement enabled. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the effect. I actually always just click on toggle O, and that's it. All right. Then I'm going to. I have here 2 more displacements, but I'm going to enable those just in a few moments. But first, I'm going to say a few words about the lightning. And Victor Hugo has used a common technique called 3D point lightning, which is typical for a studio setup. And here I am going to use the RT in combination with the light lister, so you can see the result. I have here a key light, and this is the strongest light in my scene. And it is a rectangular light. And here I have plugged a texture, and I can show you the texture. Give me just a second to find it. So this is the texture, so I can simulate a real studio softbox with it. So using this texture, I have here nice gradient from the light. Then the other light is the rim light, which comes from the opposite side of the key light, and it has this warmer feeling. And if I want to simulate real studio environment, I can even set an exact temperature to the light. And the third light is the fill light, and in this case I'm using a dome light. Here it is, which gives me uniform lighting in my scene. So this is pretty much the light setup. And now I want to go back to the displacement because I want to show you how you can optimize the render speed by using a displacement. For that purpose, I'm going to render with the adaptive, and after that I'm going to save the image so we can make a comparison. And the displacement, we call it dynamic geometry because it is created during render time and for each bucket. So here it is, and I'm going to save it, and we can see that it renders for 32 seconds. So let's go in the displacement properties, and here I can click on static displacement and on cache normals. So the static, when I clicked on the static displacement, that means that I say to V-Ray, don't create the displacement per bucket, but do it in advance and store it in the RAM. And I cached the normals as well, so I have a faster ray tracing, and this is the result. And let's see the difference. This renders for 32 seconds and the other one for 17 seconds, which is almost twice faster. But let's compare those two. Let's set this to B and this to A. And now you can see that I have lost some of the detail. I'm going to zoom at 200% so you can see it better. See? And there is a solution to this. I can fix it. And this is by going over here in the attributes and add subdivision and displacement quality attribute. So first I'm going to explain this with view dependent disabled. And if you want to see how V-Ray is subdividing your mesh, there is another trick to see that, and this is by using V-Ray extra texture render element, and in it I have plugged edges texture. And make sure you have here this show subtriangles enabled. And since we don't have so much time, I have pre-rendered this, and in order to explain you what are the settings. And this was, so let's go again in the displacement. This was rendered with view dependent off and edge length set to 0.4 and maximum subdivisions at 4. Let's switch to the extra texture, and you can see what V-Ray did. So basically, we measure the edge, the length of the edge, and if it is longer than 0.4 centimeters, this is now in when you have view dependent off, it will be in unit in scene units. So in my case, centimeters. And if the edge is longer than this value over here, subdivide it 4 times. And this is the result what I have. So this is my original mesh, and this here are the subdivisions, how it was subdivided. But when the object is away from the camera, V-Ray will still subdivide the mesh, because again, it will be just the edge of the length will be measured, and since this is in scene units, V-Ray will subdivide it again. And this is why I usually use the V-Ray displacement with a view dependent enabled. When this is enabled, this will be considered in pixels. So this example I have rendered with 7 pixels and view dependent on. So this is the result what I get. So if this time the edge length is longer than 4 pixels, V-Ray will subdivide it. And let's see what's going on when the subject is far away from the camera. So here you can see that I don't have so much subdivisions because again the edge length will be measured and it occupies less than 7 pixels in this case. And using this approach, you save time if your object is away from the camera, because V-Ray won't subdivide it, because it won't be necessary. Okay, let's jump back to the example, and just to see that. So here I have rendered this with static displacement at cache normals off, and here this was with these 2 parameters on. And here I don't have enough detail. So to bring the detail back, I will decrease the edge length. So V-Ray will subdivide the polygon when the edge length is bigger than 2, and previously it was set to 4. And I will increase the maximum subdivisions, let's say to 6, and renders one once more to compare those. And let's say this is, let's first save it. Okay, and it renders still faster than the first one. And if we make the comparison, there is a little bit of difference, but Otherwise, it looks great. I'll leave it like this. I'm pretty happy. And I want to mention just one more thing. And since V-Ray is a plugin for Maya, it needs to load the geometry and the textures in advance in the RAM in order to start the rendering. And you can cache the geometry and your bitmaps, and this will save a little bit time. For example, you can use this approach if you render animation. But after that, don't forget to clear the cache from your RAM. So let's see. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the hair and how it was set. So here I'm going to unhide it. And originally, the hair was made in 3ds Max and with plugin called Ornatrix. And I have exported it as an Alembic file and imported it into Maya with the V-Ray proxy. Here it is. So this is an Alembic file. And it is always good to grow hair from different patches. First, because it's difficult to style the hair when you grow it just from a single patch. And second of all, you have more control over it. So if you want to have more hair in front and less in the back, it's better to have more patches than just a single one. And the same approach was used here. So first, we have a one patch hair here, and it was duplicated with a little bit of differences in the seed. And for the back, there is another patch of hair, and because we see just a little bit of it, I can afford to have less hairs there. So the front hair gives me the first impression, and the back hair gives me the volume, just the volume of the hair. And here I have also hair for the eyelashes and for the eyebrows. So let's start now the RT again. And again, make sure you have here, in my case, I need the V-Ray proxy enabled because I'm importing the hair as an Alembic using the V-Ray proxy. But if you have a Maya hair, make sure your hair here is checked so you can see it in the RT. All right, and now I can play around with the thickness of the hair because I have this control directly in the V-Ray proxy. And as I have already mentioned, I want to have this softer look in front, in the front hair, so I can lower the thickness of it. So let's say 1.5, and for the other one, 1.8. And there is actually, sorry about that, but there is a note that someone cannot hear me. Can the other ones hear me well, or? Please let me know if you don't hear me, so.
Okay, Anna, I'm on it. I can hear you very well.
Okay.
So let me check with Paulina what's her problem. So please continue. I'll chat with Paulina and try to resolve her problem.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay. So For the back hair, for the hair on the back, I can allow to have a little bit thicker hair, so I will set this to 3. And using this approach, I can optimize my rendering. So in order to render fast and still have a nice result. I'm just going to, let's say, the eyelashes, I'm going to make it thicker so you can really see the effect, because it is probably not so visible at your screens. So here, now I have thicker hair, and I'm going to set it back to 1.8 for the eyelashes. Alright, and now I'm going to set the shader for the hair. And at the moment, I'm using default override material for my whole scene and for the hair as well. And V-Ray will will consider that each strand is a tube or a cylinder, and because we have thousands of strands of hair, it will need some time to render. But we can optimize the rendering process, and this is by using the V-Ray hair material. And I'm going to assign one from our shelf just by right-click on the mouse button, and here V-Ray hair material. So here it is. And by using the V-Ray hair material, V-Ray will consider that those are not tubes, but those are like stripes, and there are polygons which are facing the camera. And since the hair is really, really thin, you won't be able to see any difference. All right, and let me open the hypershade over here, and I need my hair material. And in the nature, first I wanted to mention that you have a lot of presets which you can use. If you are not sure how to use the material, there are presets for you. So let's say red, we can change it to red, or I don't know, blonde shiny, and now we have a blonde hair. And there is also another white in my scene which is disabled, but if I enable it, you see that now the light is passing through the very, very thin hairs over here, and this is called the transmission. So I can control this effect with the transmission color and the transmission amount. So if I make this something like more, so see? All right, and if I want to have more specularity, more glossy hair, I can increase the specular amount over here, and this will be the result. But in the real world, there are always variation in the color, and exactly this I want to achieve here. And for that purpose, I need first a ramp. And second, I need a hair sampler. Okay, and they are over here, so all right. So the first thing, I'm going to plug the diffuse color over here, the ramp in the diffuse color, and in the transmission as well, so we can see better the result, what's going on. Okay, and I can change the colors. Let's say something like a reddish one. This should be fine. And the other one, I'm going to make it blue so we can clearly see the difference. And I'm not after this effect. It's obvious. I want that I have variation in the strands, in the single hairs. So here comes the hair sampler. I need to connect the hair sampler to the ramp and connect it to the random by strand. It goes into the V coordinate. And now you can see the result. So at the moment, I have hairs which has a blue color and the others which have this reddish color. And if I want to have more from the red color or more from the blue one, I can play with the ramp. Now I'm going to have more from the blue colors, and you can add as many colors as you wish. So let's add a pink one and a green one, and we have lots of colors over here. All right, and you can use the V-Ray hair sampler in a different way. Let me show you this. So I'm going to connect it again to the ramp, but this time not the random by strand, but the distance along strand, again in the V coordinate. And now I have something like a rainbow. But this was just that you can see what is going on now. I'm going to click on Z and go back, and I will create another ramp, and with this ramp, let me just create it. And with this ramp, I'm going to use the hair sampler, and you can use the same hair sampler. So, and I'm going to connect the distance along strand with the V coordinate, but this time it goes not in the diffuse color, but it goes in the transparency. Using this approach, I will have a little bit more softness on the edge of my hair, and this will be the result here. All right, and using this approach, I have created the original shader for the hair, which I'm going to assign now. At this one, I have here again a hair sampler and a randomization here in the ramp. So this is it. Now I'm going to show you how you can create the material for the clothing. And I have Googled the cloth, and if you Google it, you see that the cloth has this specific colors in it. Let me find some example. For example, this one, we have this white on the edges, and then a little bit darker in here. And we want to have this softer look here as well. So I'm going to grab those two objects and go in the clothes. And here I'm going to assign a new material, a V-Ray material. And again, I need a ramp, so create a ramp. And this ramp goes into the diffuse color. Here it is. And now I need an info sampler. So this is what I'm going to use in order to achieve this softness in the look of the clothing. And now I'm going to connect the sampler info to the ramp, and I will say this time facing ratio, and the facing ratio goes into the V coordinate here. And now you can see that I have exactly the opposite effect, but I can easily fix this by changing the ramp. So here it is. And now the effect is exaggerated, but you can clearly see that we have something similar as the clothes as I have showed you. So I can play with the ramp. It don't have to be so harsh. So let's say something like this, and then I don't want to have a completely dark black cover and completely white one. So this is the effect what I am after, and exactly using this approach, I have created the material for the clothes. It is this. This is the material, and you can actually add in the ramp not just a single cover, but you can add your texture in here and make a little bit of adjustments of the texture and make it a little bit brighter also, and plug it in the other slot over here in the ramp, and you have this effect. All right, and now I'm going to set the materials first for the skin. And the skin has this ability to let the light to go inside it and travel, and some of it goes back on the surface. And we know this effect as a subsurface scatter effect. And it's mostly visible on the very thin parts of the object. So in this case, this will be visible most in the ears. Yes. And there are two different ways which are very easy in V-Ray to achieve this effect. And the first one is by using V-Ray. Let me just find it over here. A V-Ray fast access to material. I'm going to apply it. And here it is. And here again, you can actually even now see that I have here a brighter spots just by applying the material. And you can pick from different presets. Let's say pink. There is a skin pink, and the subsurface color will be the color reflected right away. So I'm going to make it something like more yellowish. And after the rays have traveled through the volume, they get back to the camera, and we are going to see this color over here. So let me change it to something more obvious. And here you can see the effect. And by changing the radius, I can say how deep should those rays travel into the object. So if I increase it like 2 centimeters, I'll be able to see more from the subsurface scatter effect. So here it is. Let me go back at 1.2 centimeters. And since V-Ray 3.0, there is, of course, I want to mention that you can play with the specular layer with the mount, and you can make the skin glossier, or you can plug a texture in it. Of course, it's up to you. And there is another material since V-Ray 3.0, and it's called a V-Ray skin material. And it was designed exactly with this purpose, to simulate a skin. And you can find it again here, V-Ray skin material. So here it is. And I will show you again a reference from the internet. I have Googled skin. Here it is. And you can clearly see that our skin has different layers. And exactly after this effect, we are after this effect using this material over here. So the shadow scattering is our epidermis layer, and you want to probably to plug your epidermis texture in the shadow color. Then we have a dermis layer over here, which is in our case medium scattering layer. And here you can plug texture with some veins or some fat tissues. And the last one is the hyperdermis, and here you can find some muscles or a color of the blood. And this is the deep scattering. So you can define how much will be visible from those layers with the shadow amount and using also the shadow radius. And the best thing about the skin material is that you have here not just one reflection layer, but you have two different layers of reflection. So you have here a primary reflection, which is set to not so glossy one, and the secondary is set to more glossy, and you can make it even glossier. And using the V-Ray Fast Access 2 material, in order to have two layers, you should use a blend material, and in the skin material you have those two reflections layer in the material itself. And now I'm going to show you the final shader, which is first this one for the skin of the character. So this is a skin material, and in the skin material I have two different textures, one for the diffuse and one for the reflection. Then this skin material goes into a blend, but I don't use the blend in order to have different reflection layers, but I use it to have freckles on the skin. And as a blend, I'm using a V-Ray noise, a noise material. It's a bitmap, sorry. So, and all this goes into a skin bump material, which is a V-Ray bump material, and in the bump I have here another bump texture, and this gives another level of detail on the skin. So now I'm going to assign the material for the teeth, which is a V-Ray Fast Access 2 material, and since the teeth are organic, I'm using this material. And for the tongue there is another material, it's this one, and it is made first with the skin material, and the skin material goes into a blend, and in the blend I have a little bit of noise, so we have this wet effect, and everything goes then into a bump, V-Ray bump material, to add a little bit more detail. You'll be able then to see this extra detail in the higher resolution render, which I'm going to show you at the end. Okay, and now I'm going to assign the material for the eyes, which is this blend material over here. And it has first a V-Ray fast access to material for the base, and then a map. So we want to see the iris, which is behind these spheres. And for a code, I'm using this V-Ray material, which is a refractive one, in order to simulate the cornea of the eye. All right, and now I'm going to assign the material of for the iris, which is a default V-Ray material with a texture on it. All right, and now what we miss here is actually the background, and I have create the background inside Maya, but you can also add it in the post. So from the frame buffer, you can add your own image for the background. It's up to you. I have choose this approach to add it over here. And let's jump actually back to the presentation. We talked about all of the materials and all right, render settings. So now I'm pretty happy with the result. I have set all of the materials, the lightning. What I should do now is to go over here and enable the other displacement nodes. So we have displacement also for the teeth and here for the clothing. And since I have rendered the whole time using DRT, I haven't set my render settings at all. And I can show you now how you can set those very easily just with the 3 sliders from the quick settings. So I'm going to stop DRT and open the quick settings. And at the moment I wasn't rendering with a GI. So I will have here these darker areas inside of the mouth. But now using the quick settings, I can set the GI very fast. So there are my 4 presets and I need the studio setup. So here I can pick between brute force, and light cache, which are the accurate methods of calculating the GI. And here I have 2 fast ones. I'm going to pick this particular one. And then the shading quality controls the quality of all of the lights and the materials in my scene. So I will increase it a little bit, let's say 5 or so. And then I want to render not with buckets, but with the progressive rendering, progressive image sampler, so I'm able to see the image right away. And the image will clears as the time pass by. But first, I have added here these render elements, and I'm going to I will render those. And now I will click on render and see the result. So using the quick settings, I have set my render settings very fast and very easy, saving a lot of time of tweaking on my actual settings, the render settings over here. And this is already the progressive image sampler, and the image will be at the beginning noisy, but I see that everything is okay and I can let it render a little bit. So back to the presentation. All right. So why I have added those render elements? I usually add render elements to my render because in the post-production I can say, okay, I want to change a little bit the color of this object, or I want from the skin to be not so reflective. I can change this in the post. And this is why I have all of my render elements over here. And also I can see if I have some noise in the image, I can see where it is. And if I say, okay, there is a little bit of noise, I can increase my shading quality. And here it is. Here I have the lightning path, the GI, and all of those. And I can compose my image in the post then. And one more thing. You all know that you can experiment with in the frame buffer using some color corrections over here, white balance, and so. And I have played with those, and I have saved. Let me just find where was it. A file. It's over here. Open, and this is my final result. This is the final touch to it, and now I'm going to show you the final render as I promised, and it is this one. So you can see the details. Here you can see now on the tongue the bump a little bit. Then you can see the displacement, the detail, the subsurface scatter, the hair, and that it goes thinner at the end. Then you can see here the bump for the cloth, and this effect which I have showed you. And this is pretty much it. Thank you guys for your attention.